I've not gone to Parliament to allow Tory MPs to trot off to Ascot.
Order! Order! Order!
Mr. Dennis Skinner.
Is the Prime Minister aware that this cabinet reshuffle of his B team hasn't raised a ripple with the general public, whereas on the other hand, those loud boos that greeted the Chancellor will haunt the posh boys forever? Why doesn't he be a man, do the decent thing, call a general election?
Sticks and stones will break my bones, but calling never hurts me, so no, I don't let that worry. The essence of socialism is still there. I like to think that I've been part of a movement which has enabled me to make a contribution. Can't you control this bloody beast of Bolsover?
Isn't it convenient that this absent Prime Minister has been able to dodge the real questions of what did he know about criminal activities from Murdoch? When did he know it? And isn't it time, based upon the British public's reaction, that we sent this non-tax-paying Murdoch back from whence he came? Hasn't the Prime Minister realised yet why those others in Europe don't take very much notice of what he's got to say?
So here we are in Bolsover, home not only to the big castle you can see in the top right hand corner of your screen right now, but also to my favourite Member of Parliament, the inspiring left-wing legend of a gentleman, Mr. Dennis Skinner. I love him that much that this is my second tribute video to him. I really hope you enjoy it, and by the end, I hope you have as much respect for Dennis as I do.
remark up now and some don't. If we allow these pit closures to take place, like occurred at Langworth, then we're going to see communities desolate. Despite 12,000 police being brought in order to prop up Mrs. Thatcher, despite her media which has supported her through thick and thin, it really is pleasing to know that despite those tremendous odds against us, the miners have once again secured a victory that will be historic, more so than 1972 and 74, because this is the turning point in the balance of industrial power in this country.
I give way to the honourable gentleman.
I'm most grateful to the Prime Minister. Will she tell us whether she intends to continue her own personal fight against a single currency and an independent central bank when she leaves office?
No, she's going to be the governor.
On the present structure,
Order. The Prime Minister.
what a good idea. I hadn't thought of it.
Dennis Skinner, Labour Party MP. John Major, Chancellor of the Exchequer, talked about the future of the economy yesterday. Are you ready to join the Conservative Party now? No, the British economy is in a recession, and it's going to get worse during 1990. And the Tory party got a real problem about managing the electoral cycle at the same time as the economic cycle. As you know, in most Western democracies, they try to get a slump before they go to the polls. When they go to the polls, they hope that they're getting out of it, or seeming to kid the people on that they're getting out of it. Reagan's done it a couple of times, and Bush managed it to some degree. And now they're coming up to the crunch here in Britain. They've had 10 years of Thatcherism. They told the British people to ride in a solid gold Cadillac, and now we're riding a junk bond economy model with the wheels off. Has Mrs. Thatcher done anything good? Not a great deal, no. She's took money from the poor and from the workers and handed it over to the bosses and the people that finance the Tory party. And my guess is that in the next election it's going to be a straight clash between the party, the Conservative Party that represents the bosses, and the Labour Party that represents working class people and their families. In fact, there are a lot of Tory MPs saying it's high time that we got rid of Mrs. Thatcher. And let's have somebody else who's not as demonstrative and as not as clear-cut in wanting to attack working class people. They've even privatised water here in Britain. I mean, they're privatising rain. I mean, can you imagine it? In America, if that was the same, Mrs. Thatcher would be privatising the Great Lakes. All the truth is out. And on a score of fronts, Mrs. Thatcher is now in deep, serious trouble, and I'm very pleased. How long have you been in politics? I've been in politics for all my life. I was born having politics for dinner. I was born in a working class household, in a trade union household, where we knew what politics really meant. It touches you at every point. And my father was a miner and I was a miner. Most of my brothers were miners, and my grandfather and so on. So we were at the sharp end. We knew what it was like to be in politics. A lot of people say, in politics that means being an MP. That's a joke. You're in politics from the day that you're born. So what? Is that when I worked in the pit, I came to Parliamentary in 1970 on £18 a week. And I think that members of Parliament who say that they're badly paid here in Britain, when you consider that the ambulance crews now are out there in struggle, in a dispute against this government, because they're trying to get a measly 11% increase, when the top directors and the non-executives have made 26% increase in their salary last year. So no, I'm not one of those members of Parliament that believe I ought to be paid as well as those in Congress. I think we're very well done by. And if you're a socialist, you shouldn't be talking about massive pay rises for yourself. You should always fight for the people at the bottom of the pile. It's already been announced today by senior surgeons in London that because of the ambulance workers and the way that they're being treated, and that the government's brought in the emergency services, the army, that people are dying, this government should be ashamed of themselves for the way in which they're using these ambulance crews to try and beat them into the ground. They're asking for 11%. Who owns the ambulances? The ambulances are owned by, in reality, by the state, but they're run by what they call regional health authorities on behalf of the government and the National Health Service. A couple of days we're going to see your House of Commons. on television in the United States. Good idea?
Well, it would have been a good idea if they'd allowed the people that produce the pictures to do what they like and to show exactly what does happen in the House of Commons, the empty benches, the people that don't turn up for work. But this boss, Mrs Thatcher, and their friends have said, no, you can only show head and shoulders, so you'll not be allowed to see a three-shot of the SDP, and you'll not be able to show the viewers a panoramic view of the House of Commons, and any incidents that they don't like, then they'll show the Speaker.
Is my honourable friend aware that in the 70s and in a lot of the 80s, we would have thanked our lucky stars in the coalfield areas to have got a growth of 1.75%. The only thing that was growing then were the lines of coke in front of Boy George and the rest of the
Order. This seems to be a trend with the Honourable Gentleman. He must withdraw that remark.
That was in the news.
Order. He must withdraw that remark.
No, I'm not withdrawing it.
Well, the Honourable Gentleman
must... It's true!
The Honourable Gentleman doesn't withdraw that remark. He must leave the chamber. I order the Honourable Gentleman to leave the chamber.
Will the Prime Minister give us a rock-solid assurance, whatever he does in order to clear the debts of the nation's finances, he will never, ever meet a Russian billionaire to try and catch the money? We'll leave that to the sleaze Tory party opposite.
Mr. Dennis Skinner.
This statement today sum up this heartless government that inhabit Millionaires' Row, sacking hundreds and hundreds of disabled workers in areas of high unemployment, where some of them in areas like mine that were finished by employees still haven't got jobs. It's time now that this government and their accompaniment here, these tin pot Liberals, understood that this is the most heartless thing that they've done since they've been in power. It's time they went. Not really in 84. It began in 1972, didn't it? When we won that magnificent victory against the Tories, against Teddy, and they never forgot it. And then we repeated it, didn't we? In 1974, when it became an election between Teddy, who rules the country, the Tories or the miners. Unfortunately, a majority gave us, the Labour Party, a victory.
Mr. Dennis Skinner, does the Secretary of State agree that it takes two sides to create any conflict? And this government, this smug, arrogant government, has revelled in the part that it's played in this dispute. In the real world, does he agree that trade unionists have to fight for every penny and every pension, but the bankers, they just wait for the government to give in and to line their pockets? That's the real contrast.
Mr. Dennis.
Does the Prime Minister know what day it is?
The Labour Party, clean money from the trade unions. We should be talking to the unions now to find ways and means to ensure that that money still comes in. We could sell each union 100,000 Labour Party cards. How's that? That's how we could get the money in. And that's what we should be talking about. We've got to fight with the students. What a wonderful job they made, didn't it, this year? Let's never forget it. For 20 years, I was waiting outside Parliament for the students to come by. And they came, I was on my crutch, and I hobbled all the way, nearly to the Tory party headquarters. Little did I know I was only 100 yards away. What great days for them. But they set the scene in the early days of this government. And then there were 3,000 blind and disabled people marched in Parliament, through Parliament, past Parliament, trying to hang on to their pitiful disability living allowance. I've never seen it ever before, and I've been there for 40 odd years. At the same time that week, the Sunday Times, the Murdoch newspaper, printed a rich list that showed that the wealthy had increased their money by 37% in the first year of this tin pot Tory Lib Dem government. So the blind and the disabled can be left to one side, but the billionaires were able to make a fortune. Oh yes, we need to march with people like that. We have to fight against the pay cuts. We have to fight against the privatisation of NHS. Already they've announced they're going to get rid of 130 statutory bodies in the National Health Service. 130. And they've already got plans for 500 odd quangos in their place. And they talk about they've had a pause and a listening exercise. And so we've a lot of tasks to do. And that's why we have to join with everybody. Now I'm going to come to a tricky area. The police are angry at the government. I know it sounds odd, and I've never seen it happen to the extent it's happening now. Do we forget all green? Do we join them? I'm going to give you a free vote. The jury's out. But believe me, it's not very handy for the Tories to be seeing the police attacking them every single day. And we have to fight to keep Mayday. The Tories want to get rid of that as well. So it's time to stop the meddling. stop talking about blue Labour, old Labour, new Labour, sky blue pink Labour. Let's recapture the spirit of one of the greatest reforming governments we ever had. In 1945, we had an economic problem 10 times bigger than what it is today. The country was skint, and Nye Bevan said, let's build a health service, let's build a welfare state. We can do anything if we've got the guts and the desire and the imagination to do it. That's the spirit we need. We get it all here. Let's call it the new Durham Manifesto. Thank you very much.
Mr. Dennis Skinner.
Hasn't the Prime Minister realised yet why those others in Europe don't take very much notice of what he's got to say? Doesn't he realise that they work it out that this Prime Minister is being constantly undermined by the antics of his Chancellor of the Exchequer, the ex-Chief Whip, Boris Johnson? It goes on forever. This heir to Blair has suddenly become like John Major all over again.
Dennis Skinner.
If this government claims to be whiter than white, why is it that the top spinner in number 10 Downing Street learnt his trade in the phone-tapping News of the World run by Murdoch? Surely, if this murky affair rumbles on, will the Prime Minister come and make a statement relieving Coulson of his job?
Skinner, isn't this the same Prime Minister who month after month has been castigating working people for not staying at meetings to deal with pensions? So he's walked out without using his veto, he's walked out without getting a rebate like Mrs Thatcher did, he's walked out without a couple of opt-outs like Major, as Del Boy would say. What a plonker.
Speaker, early this morning, when we kicked off at 9:30, I requested that a minister be available today in order to answer these very serious charges arising out of the fact that on Monday it appears that we were misled in this House, and the minister was given the impression that there would be no chance whatsoever of this thing collapsing. Now that it has, I think they've a duty to be present. They're treating this House with contempt.
Order. I've got the message. Order. I've got the message.
Mr. Dennis Skinner.
Having listened to all the plaudits, all I can say is this man, Mr. Carney, and Mr. Bean had better be good. In a time of austerity, when food banks are rising in almost every town and city in Britain, isn't it high time that this government published a comprehensive list of all those people that are profiting out of these tax avoidance schemes? Yeah. Even Graham Aronson, a government advisor, forecasts today that if something isn't done, there'll be riots on the streets. Now, this is a homegrown problem. Don't blame anybody else. Let's have a list of all those people close to home and those on Millionaires Row.
Dennis Skinner. So this is the big one.
Amidst all the gloom this week, two good news stories. One, the minimum wage, 10 years old, still going strong. Second, economic pundits now can see the sunny uplands out of the slump. Even the OECD, George Soros, however, says recovery is on the way. He knows all about money and slumps, because he was the man who took £2 billion from underneath the noses of two Tory grandees, Lord Lamont and the leader of the opposition.
Dennis
isn't the truth of the matter that one thing that characterises this government above many others during the whole of its period of office is the fact that it's been telling the British people that deregulation is good for you. The net result is there was bound to be a day when there would have to be a reckoning up. And what's happening now is the British people are scared about the result of relaxing the rules. This government had a judgment to make many years ago about relaxing the rules in favour of the animal food manufacturers or standing four square with the British people. It chose deregulation, and the net result is that we've got a British people in fear. They've got to pay for it. The farmers will have to suck them up as well. The truth is, this government made the judgment and they should carry the can. It's time they went.
Dennis Skinner.
Can the Prime Minister tell us what action is going to be taken against those bankers who have run their banks into the ground? Those Tory fat cats cannot blame...
Order. Let the honourable gentleman speak. I want to hear what he's saying. The honourable gentleman.
Those Tory fat cats at the banks, represented by the party over there, can't blame the trade unions this time for the almighty mess that this country is in. In another generation, they would have been described as the enemy within. When Lord Patten talked about the retirement of George Entwistle, he went on to say that he acted with honour, with bravery, with courage. What kind of bravery and courage does it take to leave office with £1 million?
Dennis Skinner, at least he tells it like it is. He's my hero.
People set out, apparently, to go to university, to get a job as a policy advisor and get in the right place at the right time. And there you are.
We seem to have lost that sort of politician, don't we? That fighting politician. Now it's all about media, spin, getting united when you retire.
What does it do to politics?
And stand outside number 10 and have a photograph taken. I'd never even seen the place when they asked me to be nominated for Parliament way back in 1967.
I just think give him a week as the head of the, not forever, but give him a week and they'd be running for the hills.
Why is the Secretary of State for Culture getting better employment rights than the rest of the workers in Britain? Is it possibly because he knows that whilst ever the Culture Secretary is in the firing line, then it prevents the bullets from hitting him, the Prime Minister?
Yeah. Mr. Dennis Skinner.
Is the Deputy Prime Minister aware that now that the gang of 4 Tories are gallivanting around America, he's got a chance to shine? Now, what does he really think about this Murdoch sleaze and the latest development? The Prime Minister riding borrowed police horses, having employed Andy Coulson in the heart of government. Man to man, what does he really think? I'll give him a chance to separate him from the serried ranks of Tories behind him. Come on, be a man.
The most interesting thing about the extras was there were half a dozen Tory whips down there, probably guarding the place. And they were extras as well, but they had to sit on the same side of me shouting insults at Thatcher. That was the most amusing part, Tory whips shouting at Thatcher.
I ask the right honourable gentleman, whose fault is that?
Mrs. Thatcher was a very divisive character. She is mainly responsible for the demise of British manufacturing. That people talk today about where has British manufacturing gone? And the truth is, it went, most of it, in the Thatcher years. We had 700 pits when I went to work down there in 1949, and now there are about 3 or 4. Now that is what Thatcher was responsible for. Destroying the shipbuilding industry, the steel industry, then the pits, and then she finally joined up with Murdoch to smash the print unions. That's her legacy.
Looking at the film as a whole, what do you make of Meryl Streep's portrayal of Margaret
Oh,
Thatcher?
there's no doubt. I mean, I saw her in the flesh there, and I spoke to her after she'd done one of the scenes, and it's pretty clear she made a first-class fist of it. I mean, she's always been meticulous in her preparation for all her films. That's why she's won Oscars, has been nominated for Oscars countless times, and will almost certainly be nominated again.
Dennis Skinner.
As the House will know, I've been a regular customer of the NHS in the last 12 years, and it hurts me to think that after all the wonderful treatment I've had for cancer, a bypass and a hip replacement, I'm still here to tell the story because of the treatment by those nurses and doctors. Please stop this savage attack upon the NHS and drop this dreadful bill.
Mr. Dennis Skinner.
24 years is a long time in politics, and when John Smith came into the House of Commons in 1970, along with a lot of others, some of whom have spoken today, I always had an idea that he would be finishing upon that bench, and I'd probably still be on this one, almost certainly. I speak today because I come from a different wing of the party, and yet we never had words in anger. It's incredible throughout the whole of that period that we were able to remain friends. And only a fortnight, 3 weeks ago, he was giving me a message to read out at my mate Bob Cry's funeral. It was a wonderful, glowing tribute, and it would be wrong of me if I were not to repay that tribute that he gave to me to read out on behalf of Bob Cryer. Why are people so full of praise for him today? My guess is because he was one of those people that could operate in this place. And some can and some can't. And yet he understood its moods. This place sometimes is like a church, and on other occasions it's like a zoo. And in order to manage to get top side of it, you've got to be able to change tack. And on Tuesday, he did it again. When I spoke to him afterwards, I said, you changed your question, didn't you, John? Because of what the Prime Minister had said, and smartly and deftly he'd moved ground. That was his ability to speak extemporaneously. And, I mean, he used to come to me on occasions and say, have you got any good jokes for my speech tomorrow? I mean, that kind of umbilical cord that stretched out from him to others was important in our movement. I'd laid bets on him opening that door at number 10, and I've no doubt that he would have done that without any question whatsoever. He dragged the Labour Party, in my opinion, from the depths of despair to the pinnacles of power, and no greater tribute could be paid to him today than if we were to say unanimously, instead of adjourning at this moment, if we were to say that John Smith, we're going to pass the Disabled Persons Bill today unanimously. That's what we should do in his memory.
Skinner.
The Prime Minister realised that probably the most controversial part of what he had to say was in its reference to the fact that there would be no constitutional changes. I think it would be fair to say that at this time, as a result of the occurrences over the course of the past several months and the pushing of the self-destruct button by the monarchy, that we could now be witnessing the end of the monarchy, and the reigning Queen could possibly be the last. And it would be not something that could be blamed upon people like those of us that believe that there's no need for a monarchy in this land now. In view of that, could I ask him to bear in mind
that this shattering announcement will result in changes in our constitution, and that it's high time that we stop this charade of swearing allegiance to the Queen and her heirs and successors, because we don't know from time to time who they are.
Mr. Dennis Skinner. Mr. Skinner.
Is the Minister aware that in the next 2 or 3 days, members of Parliament and ministers will be voting to set a new and increased national minimum wage for MPs and ministers? If it's good enough for them, why can't we have a national minimum wage for everyone else? And if those increases go beyond the pay barrier, will the government give a guarantee that workers, including nurses and others, and pensioners, will all receive the same?
Dennis Skinner.
Why didn't my right honourable friend say to the last Tory questioner that we're doing our best to keep the prison population down? We've kept 2 butlers out of jail in the last few years. What's wrong with this system of justice that allows these people to prepare cases? Yes. The police go along with these people at the palace, and the result is that the taxpayer finish up with £2 million. Yeah. We could use that money for the firefighters. Yeah. On the subject of money, as my right honourable friend had a word with the Chancellor of the Exchequer in the last few days, in order to ensure, as he said a little earlier, that everybody carries the same burden, will he be introducing rules to change the Tories' 1993 Act that disallowed certain people from being involved in paying inheritance tax? Will he bring the royal family into the net in Jubilee year?
Dennis Skinner.
Will the Prime Minister just rehearse for a few more moments what he had to say on unemployment at the beginning of these exchanges? Is he aware there'll be more jobs knocking about if some of these Tories who've got 400 jobs between them moonlighting were spreading them around? And isn't it significant on the very day that the Leader of the Opposition opens his trap on this issue, it's the very week when the last Leader of the Opposition has just taken 2 more jobs.
Dennis Skinner.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It's like Christmas Day, birthday, Boxing Day, all rolled into one. Earlier, my right honourable friend was being challenged on the question of carbon emissions. Would my right honourable friend take into account that one of the problems why carbon emissions increased was because the Tories, when they were in power, closed down the clean coal technology plant in Yorkshire? Will he also now make sure that of those few pits that remain, we manage to keep them on board? Is he aware that at Harworth Colliery an attempt has been made to get a loan to save 288 jobs? Will he have a word with the Chancellor of the Exchequer next to him? All they want is a guaranteed loan, and those jobs can be secured. Is he playing?
Well,
Madam Speaker, the
Queen requires the attendance of this honourable House immediately in the House of Peers.
Tell her to pay a tax.
Not untypical intervention from Dennis Skinner, the MP for Bolsover there, who's always barracking and ridiculing the procedures here when they involve not directly parliamentary things, but anything that he thinks is.
Mr. Speaker, the Queen commands this honourable House to attend upon Her Majesty immediately in the House of Peers. It tolls for thee, my gate.
You may have heard there Dennis Skinner, I suspect, saying it tolls for thee, Maggie, thinking this may be the last Parliament for the election. A dog, incidentally, on the right, belonging to Mr. Blunkett, a blind MP in the Labour benches, who brings the dog in as his guide dog. And so these famous figures from British politics, William Waldegrave in the middle there, just going out, the new member of the Cabinet, Secretary of State for Health, pushing his way to the front, I think, trying to get into the House of Lords in his proper place as a Cabinet Minister, Roy Hattersley with John Major.
Don't push it on because telly's in. Right? Oh, I see. Keep quiet. Up the front. Well, it's a good outfit.
Mr. Speaker, the Queen commands this honourable House to attend upon Her Majesty immediately in the House of Peers. Open the door.
There he is.
Mr. Speaker, the Queen commands this honourable House to attend Her Majesty immediately in the House of Peers.
Who shot the Harriers?
And he has to ask to be given admission. So the doors will open, let him in, to summon the Commons. Not exactly a respectful hush in the House of Commons for Blackrod's entry.
Mr. Speaker, the Queen commands this honourable House to attend Her Majesty immediately in the House of Peers.
Did she lock the doors behind her?
And some of you will have heard the unmistakable voice of Dennis Skinner, the Labour MP, suggesting that the doors...
Open the door. Mr. Speaker, the Queen commands this honourable House to attend Her Majesty immediately in the House of Peers.
Any Tory moles at the palace?
Sergeant-at-Arms takes the mace amid some laughter after one of the expected comments from Dennis Skinner, the Labour MP.
It was in the year of 84 shit really hit the fan, when Mac the Knife McGregor, Maggie Thatcher's hatchet man, said he'd have to close another 20 pits to meet the plan, and ditch another 30,000 miners. Daddy, were you with the first of the first? Did you tell the NCP to do its worst? Or did you save your lily liver, sell the union down the river, a scab of black like one forever cursed? Well, when Arthur Scargill heard the news, he said that Yankee slob, he's a gift from Cowboy Reagan, and he's here to steal our jobs, do an axe job on the union for the crummy Thatcher mob, but we'll show him what it means to be a miner. Daddy, did you man the picket line? Did you fight to save the future of the mines? Or did you take the wrong direction? Did you squeal for police protection? Did you let them see you in your rubber spine? Well, the Yorkshire lads came out on strike. They said it's evident that the only way to stop McGregor and the government is to bring the lads out everywhere, from Scotland down to Kent. We'll show them what it means to be a miner. Daddy, what did you do in the strike? Did you stand there with your mates and join the fight? Or did you show a yellow belly, spill your guts out on the telly? Did you let the bosses fill you full of shite? Some didn't hear the strike call, for guts and brains they lacked. They're the colour of a primrose, but their hearts and legs are black, and their noses are all brown for being up the rear of Mac. They're just a bunch of dirty black leg miners. Daddy, did you march at the head? Did you stand there on the picket line unfed? Or did you sell your mates to have a fortnight on the Costa Brava? Did you choose a 2-week holiday instead? Well, the battle it is joined at last, the forces they are massed. On their side the press that tell ye all the weapons of their class, plus McGregor and his blacklegs, but we'll never let him pass. For the NUM's the weapon of the miners. Daddy, what did you do in the strike? Did you scab and let your workmates wage the fight? How the neighbours stood and booed us, said we had the stink of Judas. Daddy, what did you do in the strike? Daddy, what did you do in the strike? Did you stand there with your mates and join the fight? Or did you show a yellow belly, spill your guts out on the telly? Did you let the bosses fill you full of shite? Did you let the bosses fill you full of shite?